order the scheduled monthly meeting of the Groveland Township Board of Zoning Appeals. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Danielle, roll call please.
Jeff Henzine,
Here.
Mike Donlin,
Here.
Judy Schulte is excused, Gina Mazzarelli,
Here.
Chris Jonassy is excused.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving to tonight's agenda, beginning with the approval of our minutes from the last, I believe it was the last scheduled meeting. It was back in May?
Yep, May 9th.
Wow, okay. Hopefully my fellow board members, if you had a chance to review the minutes from that meeting, if there's been any suggested changes or revisions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to approve acceptance.
I would make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 9th, 2023 as presented.
Worthy Chair. I was not here for the May 9th meeting. Am I able to
I think
vote?
so.
You can-
I
you
would
were-
not want
I was gonna say, I was gonna lift his burden and say, you know what, I was here, so I can second.
Yes.
to. Yeah, okay, thank you.
But you can because you were able to read them.
I was able, okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure. I was sleeping that night and somebody called me, you know.
So,
Sorry, guys.
those in favor of acceptance of the meeting minutes from our May 9th BZA session as prepared, in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There being none, the motion is approved and the minutes will be accepted. Next item would be our agenda for this evening's meeting, rather straightforward. Hopefully, you folks have had a chance to look at that. Any questions or concerns regarding tonight's agenda?
I have several questions, but I wanna
Right.
have Mr. Cook, Mr. and Mrs. Cook kind of talk about what they're doing.
Let's get to an admission of the agenda for this evening's
Okay.
meeting.
Okay.
You wanna make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's.
And I would second that. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, tonight's agenda
I'm jumping the gun.
will be accepted,
And then we can
And-
open the public hearing.
and then we can go into new business.
Yep.
correct?
Yeah.
So, new business would be the Bo Cook variance request, focused on location, size, and material. So at this point, we'll go into public hearing, Danielle, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I will make a motion that we open the public hearing for variance request number PH 23-0008. The applicant being Bo Cook, owner of 995 Hollyview Lane. I believe that would suffice for purposes of the record.
For opening, yep. I
Okay.
need a second. A second too.
Oh, second that,
Yes,
yes.
Gina, sorry.
Opening the meeting.
Not, I don't need a minute myself.
So we have a second in favor of opening public hearing?
Yes.
Yes, Gina seconds. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, so we are now in public hearing. And I guess just for purposes of keeping things, what's the word, streamlined?
Mhm.
Easy to understand, the applicant's here tonight, correct?
Yes,
And what is your name, sir?
Bo Cook, and this is my wife Leslie,
Okay.
and we live at the residence 995 Hollywood Lane.
And you prepared the application and you submitted the materials with the application request this evening?
I did.
You did a great job.
Thank
by the way. I thought you had like a retained vendor who prepared all the materials, because the overheads were particularly helpful, so thank you for that.
You're my poster child now.
So I guess I'll stop talking at this point, and I would just invite you to, I guess, state your, if you wanna present a summation of the request, maybe the basis for the request and the reason why you need the variance.
Okay, so the basis for the request is we want to build a pole barn in our property, an additional one. With that being said, there's certain regulations within Groveland Township that we would not be able to meet. The main one being is that we have to be behind the front of the house. And with our property, I kind of drew it on the map, but with our property behind our house is a pond and then wetlands. And then on the other side of the house is our driveway with an existing pole barn that is there already, just a smaller one. And then on the other side of the house, I kind of laid out the reasons why, but it's not a good fit for the area of the pole barn. Primarily being that we have our septic and septic field that would be in that area. So to have any kind of heavy equipment drive across that, along with getting stuff to the pole barn after we build it. So putting in any kind of driveway would not really be feasible in that area. Along with that, there's a few other reasons, but they're not the major ones. But we have trees that are over in that area that do shade the house. It is on the east side, which shades it primarily the sun, so it helps kind of heat or cool our house in the summer, so we don't have to run the AC as much. The grade is quite steep in that area, and also it back up really, really close to our well. The wellhead is back in that corner. Along with that, there's a horse farm that has a riding course that's there where they do riding lessons. So a lot of that construction there would be very bothersome for the neighbor, I would believe. The other two variants are that like materials. So the front of our house is brick with a little bit of vinyl siding. So the material that we would want to use is the metal siding, which would be matching, very similar to the existing pole barn that's there. And then size. So size, our house is listed at roughly 1,400 square foot, and the regulations state that we can only build 50% of the size of that, and we're looking to build around a 1,400 square foot pole barn, around 32 by 48. I did outline kind of the area that we wanted to put it. That area would meet the 20 foot from property line. It would meet the 50 foot from the front of the road line. In fact, it'd be further back from there. And it's kind of right next to our driveway. It would not be directly in front of our house, but in all technicalities, it would be in front of the house. It's a side yard, but it's the front. It would just be on the other side of the driveway. From there, we do already have a line of trees that are on the top of our hill, and it would go behind that line of trees there existing. There's a house in that area that's there, and it would be behind the front line of that house, so it's not real close to the road. So I guess that's the base synopsis.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Is it where I saw the trees cut down?
Yes,
Okay.
we cut down 2 pine trees that were starting to die there.
Okay.
Yep, it would be just on that side of the driveway there.
Okay.
So just, I guess to begin, one of the general observations I had with regard to light materials, there was nothing in the documentation that kind of elaborated upon what you're proposing with regard to the materials, unless I missed it.
No, I wasn't sure what to put in there, and they hung in a little box, so I didn't write that one up as much as I did on the front of the house one.
Okay.
But the like materials, so like I said, on our house currently, on the front of the house is brick, and then it goes to a vinyl siding, kind of a dark tan siding. There's a pole barn on the side of our house that has the typical pole barn metal siding, and the intent would be to use like materials from that. We still want to get more of that kind of brownish color. That other pole barn that's in the side is that same color, but it's faded over the years and almost kind of looks like a reddish purple, you know? Yeah, just because it's faded over time, but the intent would be the original color of what that barn was when it was built a while ago.
That was one of my questions on the pole barn and stuff. What size? You answered that. You said 1,500 square feet or 14?
Roughly 1,400 square foot,
1,400
32 by
square feet.
48.
Okay, and then that would be just a metal roof and everything on there too as
It
well?
would be shingle roof, which the current pole barn and our house today are shingled, so that part would be like materials. It's just the siding part of that.
I think the first thing I'd say is, do we all agree that he's got a hardship and he can't put it in his backyard?
I agree with that.
Okay,
I,
yeah.
you know, at first glance, I was looking at it and, you know, with everything that he has in the triangular shape of your backyard, there's just no way you're gonna get it there. So I do agree with
Okay.
that statement
Statement,
for
right.
putting a second pole barn on the property, that we would be able to put it in the backyard,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
I guess just a general curiosity, you have an existing pole barn currently?
Yes.
And this would be a second?
Yeah, it'd be a second pole barn.
Okay. There's no commercial operation tied to any of this, is there?
Absolutely not.
No?
No, my wife works for the school system and I'm mechanical engineering automotive industry, so.
So you just like your man space,
Toys. She likes all
Family
my
space.
stuff outside, so. No, we're just really into like outdoor activities and things like that. I'm really into hunting and fishing, and
Okay.
our current pole barn is past its limit, so.
So storage primarily?
It's storage is a primary reason, yes. Yeah.
So in your materials, and Danielle, maybe you could help me out with this, with regard to the property overview page specifically, you had referenced a section of the code, I'm assuming this is a reference to the ordinance, 54-802.
Yeah, that's what I pulled off the Groveland website on the ordinances.
And it's very important that as a public body, we are very clear with regard to our understanding of the request and our approval or
Sure.
denial of the request. So 54-802, is that a correct reference to?
Let me Google, let me look it up.
I was looking for that last night, because that was my first thing, and because I'm familiar with the 616. I
Correct.
go, where's the 802? And I was going through that, and I could not find the 802.
So it's important just that we have a meeting of the minds, if you will,
Sure.
with regard to what specific provision of the ordinance we are, varying from, if you
Yeah.
will. So I don't know where 802 comes from, but as I understood it, with regard to what Mike just referenced, 54-616, at least at this point in time, is the detached accessory building ordinance for the township. And as to your property, you have how many acres?
2.7, 2.9.
2.7, and it's zoned REF, correct? I think.
I believe that's the terminology
Yes.
stuff that I'm not.
The zoning district, well, I'm just going by your application.
Okay.
Rural, yes, it is rural state farm. I did that.
I phoned a friend with Danielle.
Okay, so your zoning district, rural estate farm, you have 2.7 acres, so with regard to the ordinance, that puts you squarely within the purview of 54-616 sub 2.
You might have just maybe had a typo, cause 54-777, 54 through 54-805 is reserved for future. So you might just hit it.
Okay, I took a snippet probably from the wrong portion of the code.
Okay, so thank you, Mike. It's 54-616 sub 3.
Yes.
That kind of governs our deliberations.
Yes,
Okay, and very generally, it pertains to parcels that are greater than 2.0 acres, but less than 5. And it sets out a number of, elements that must be satisfied with regard to, compliance for properties such as yours, as it relates to detached accessory buildings. The first of which, and I'm a very
Linear.
sequential thinker, right? So I have to go through these in order.
he's a lawyer.
The first one being maximum total floor area for the detached accessory, meaning the pole barn that's proposed, shall be 3,200 square feet. The maximum is 3,200 square feet.
If it's follows the ordinance, which would be in accessory buildings are allowed in the side and the rear. So it's only 3,200 square feet if they put it in the side or the rear.
So are you trying to get a total square footage between two pole barns? What are you trying to put
Well,
together?
I guess No, I wasn't actually, but that's,
Okay,
that's a good
okay.
point. I look at these detached accessory buildings individually,
Mhm,
right?
yep,
So we're here
you're right.
tonight for
For just the one.
proposed
Just the one, yeah.
barn number
Yeah.
2.
I mean, if he was to have a lot, I would have, before we did this, calculated to see whether it was 10% of the coverage or not.
But Danielle, I think he's fine.
Yeah.
Because you had said the proposed square footage of barn number 2 is roughly 1,400.
Yes.
So this says the maximum for an individual detached accessory shall be 3,200.
If it's in the side or the rear, but he wants it in front.
And that's supposed to be 50.
Yeah, because item 3E is detached accessory building may be constructed in the front of the main or principal building provided the following conditions are met. And that right there is where the variance comes in, because then it becomes comparable to the principal building. It also can only be 50% of the square footage of the principal building. And it can, and only one detached accessory building shall be constructed in front of that principal building. So because he cannot build on the side yard or the backyard of his lot, item 3E becomes the guiding principle for this variance of whether or not we grant or do not grant the variance. Because he's asking for 14.
You are absolutely correct.
This
Now
is
that I
why
read
this has been rewritten, so you
Yes.
don't have to
So do I?
find it in
do I
7
throw a
different
wrench in
spots.
this and tell them about what we adopted last night?
It's still the same.
It's still the same?
It's still all the
Okay, 'cause
same, yes.
I'm reading that and it's much more streamlined, thank you, Danielle.
Well,
Anyway,
yes.
yeah.
You can read it much easier in
Oh
the
my
new
gosh,
ordinance.
yeah.
This, you have to look at the top of the ordinance, then you have to find an article,
Yeah.
and then you have to look at a couple different case scenarios. So it's been rewritten. It reads the same, exact same,
It's- yeah.
just you don't need a bachelor's degree to figure out what it
So-
is.
No, go right ahead.
Well, in looking at the ordinance and looking at that, yes, there is a hardship in the fact that, the cooks cannot build within the back or side yard, which forces their hand to the front yard, so it enforces this 3E, right? So the next thing is there a hardship for complying with the 50% of the principal building square footage? And, is there a hardship for, meeting the facade requirements or the similar, material build?
Yeah.
Those are become the two items that really are now the topic, because we can agree that it forces them into the front yard, but does it force them to not comply to those?
Right.
So that's the hardship, that's where I think we have to deliberate on the.
So I wouldn't say hardship for like materials as much as I would say, are we doing home or are we existing pole barn? Because does that weigh in at all? If you're going to match what you've already got existing in those materials, you're gonna make the pole barns look alike. I've not seen a brick pole barn before, I will say that.
Well, and.
So on that point, what do you?
On that point, I know in my time here on the board, we've gone through these front yard barns. Basically, I think every meeting I've been here for the past
For
4 years. has
4
been
years,
one of
that's all we've
these-
had.
One of these, barn situations, and I know there have been a couple where the facade that we did require, another similar one, if I recall correctly, was in the front yard. But they did have to meet the facade requirements, to a degree.
Yeah, they use the
Where they
vinyl
used
instead
a
of stone.
vinyl or wainscot, a brick wainscot that would match the facility, things along that line. So there was some give and take in that. So I've seen that happen with that. I think the principle of the ordinance, in my opinion, is to prevent an accessory structure of size in the front yard, and not to say that a pole barn's, unsightly, because, you know, those pole barns can be pretty nice, in fact, yeah. Anyway, so, but it's really kind of to regulate the looks and feel of the community with barns in the front yard. The other thing is, there was, in those other instances, there was a lot of buffering that was happening between topography and existing distances between other structures. So that was also part of I believe, the board's, so I'm kind of like going back on some of this stuff on what we had done before.
Precedents.
And, so that's kind of what I'm remembering, Jeff, in regards to that.
Do you want me to tell you what you guys agreed upon on the last 4 of them? What the variance you said was okay?
Yeah, yeah.
The one was,
I just want to be consistent.
yeah.
That's what we need to be.
the one was, it backed up to the DNR land. This was like, I think back in Jenny's 7A days. It backed up to DNR. You were deciding whether it was a front or a rear because he had that wonky shaped property.
Oh, that was the.
And it was actually kind of in the front, but kind of not. So you let that one pass with just regular pole barn looking.
But that one didn't require a variance because
No, we ended up telling
we
them
ended
we
up
didn't need it.
determining that their rear yard lot
Right.
was a particular, it wasn't,
Not where they thought it
a
was.
side, it was being considered a rear yard lot, you know, and we, if I'm correct, it was a cornucopia lot,
Very
property.
weird shape, yeah.
And
On a
that one,
cul-de-sac.
because they were able to meet their side yard distances with that, they had to move their pole barn like 10 feet.
Yes.
And they were able to comply with the ordinance without an ordinance, without a variance
Okay.
altogether.
Right.
So they went, amen, I don't have to do that,
Yeah.
move the barn over.
Okay.
So that one really, there was another one further back that was, the front yard and topo and similar lot
Yeah.
tightness and stuff like that.
Yeah, the last couple of them
The
have been, the
last-
backyard's been like wetlands.
Right.
Like
one
the
of
last,
these drop
this one
offs
and
like
the
that,
last two.
right. And the one that was on Dixie, what we agreed to, because he had a stone home,
Mhm.
and he was going to use the stone vinyl for the front of the facade of
Mhm.
and then the one over on Madsen, he had the, T111. So he was going to use similar.
Didn't you allow one to use the pole barn material but the same color as the house?
And that was the T111 one, because
Okay.
he didn't want the wood down, because where it was
Right.
more wooded and, you know, not
Right.
gonna hold up as well.
So,
Right,
you know, I think there's some, from what I'm hearing, is there's some leniency we had with that, with those,
right.
with that altogether. The square footages was not part of those discussions because of. they
One of
met
them
those-
Just the
built
one,
bigger.
yeah.
One of them
Yeah,
built
one of-
bigger.
And that was only because he had packages, and it was, what was it, 25 square feet?
Yes.
Something like that, because he was choose between this package and this package, and the one package that his preference was 25 square feet larger than what was allowable. But because it was a package, we did allow that. I don't remember what Judy's verbiage
Okay.
was, but we did
Okay.
let that.
I think Judy had said, you know, if it was in the backyard, he
Sure.
wants to build it
It-
this
right.
is the hardship. He wants to
Yeah.
put it in the backyard, he wants to
Yeah.
build it this size, and I think it kind of got rolled into
Yeah,
all
yeah,
together, you know.
that makes sense.
It was just the materials that was hard.
It was a small amount difference from what he would have been allowed by ordinance to build versus what the kit he was wishing to
Right.
purchase.
Well, the ordinance for the rear yard,
For the
because we
rear
gave
yard,
him the
I'm
full
sorry,
amount, it's
for-
big.
Yeah, yeah.
So he went way over what was allotted for the front yard,
Right.
because we gave him what he wanted to, what he was allowed in the backyard, which I think was 32, either 1,800 or,
No, he ended-
was it
only-
1,800?
Well, close, it was like seven, yeah.
Something like 17, 1,800, something like that.
I'm not
Okay.
familiar. So.
I don't know if you, I
I
don't
don't
think you were
think
here,
you
you
were- yeah, I
you
don't
were
think-
napping.
Yeah.
Oh, was that my name?
That was probably that one. Yeah,
Felt
because
really
he actually
bad.
had
You're
to come,
forgiven.
he actually had to come back. Because
Yes.
he couldn't tell us some of the things we needed to know to make, the proper determination, so that man had to.
So the bottom line in this particular situation, you know, that the building facade, there's a little bit of past leniency that we could help with, you know, maybe consider. The other thing is that you know, right now you wanna build a 1,400 square foot barn. that is, from my understanding, your principal building is 1,400 square feet?
It's 1,400 square feet, which
So-
doesn't include
It's a
our
little bit over 14.
sunroom and our garage, so the actual ground space is bigger than 14, but the livable
Right.
Okay,
square footage is 14.
and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the square footage is based on the principal living area of the building?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just want.
Your sunroom would be included though. Did you get it reassessed with the sunroom?
I don't think so. I don't
How many
think
square
it's-
feet do you think that is?
It's 20 by 15, I know, because I measured the whole house when I.
So they
I
would,
worked for Servpro at the time.
You do the
So
math
it's
better
roughly
than I do.
1,700 square feet then, if you really.
Yeah.
I'm just rounding.
Sure.
Come on, Lynn, help me with the math.
right?
Anyways.
I have a minor in mathematics.
Masters in mathematics besides a bachelor.
So,
Guys can think of
even, so basically, you're asking for 90% when the ordinance says 50%. I'm just rounding numbers right now. And I struggle with that, I'll be honest with you. You know, the ordinance had an intent with writing that, but I struggle with that. Even though the location, I just, there's other circumstances I think that were taken into consideration in the other instance, like buffer areas, vegetation. And, you know, when I looked at the property today, I was kind of like looking at that, you know, there's a principal residence right behind where the barn is proposed to be. You know, it's fairly close. I mean, there's not a lot of buffer there. The other thing that I looked at and is the existing barn.
Mhm.
And I'm looking at, okay, you know, my landscape architecture is coming out in me, looking for other alternate solutions and stuff, and utilizing that existing barn location and expanding that barn to meet your requirements. Because if you're in that side yard, you have the expansion capability for going behind a little bit. You have large silver maple behind there, but you have that, and you have that even going a little wider too. So there's, you know, I'm struggling with the square footage on this
Well,
thing.
yeah,
So,
and I think to your point, Mike, I kind of concur with that concern because the limitation with regard to the square footage as it relates to the size in comparison to the principal building only attaches to front set detached accessory structures. In other words, it's only for the detached accessory structures that are in the front of the home. And that's where the ordinance speaks to limitations that keep these structures proportionate in regard to the dwelling or the principal structure on the property, which in this case, your home is like, you know, Mr. Donlin pointed out, is we're talking 90% of the principal structure, which is, it's a significant deviation. Would you agree?
Yeah,
So
I'm
I guess-
intrigued by your idea.
So I guess I would turn it back to you, Mr. Cook and Mrs. Cook. What is what are the grounds, what is the basis, the hardship for the size departure or variance request? Why does it have to be that large,
A
given
lot
that
of it
it's a
is
second?
with the multiple boats that I have, and some of them already being kept outside, along with other things that I want to store in that area with all the hunting and the fishing gear. So there's a lot of other storage, and our current pole barn is already pretty much full and kind of compacted in there with all that. Also with the extent of even the regulations stating that you're allowed to build one pole barn, so it's not trying to build one and then come in here for a variance and a variance and a variance and expand and expand. So spending that money primarily up front is a lot of the cost is getting somebody to come in there the first time. So this intent is to kind of fill to the need that we want with the potential future expansion of what we may need in the future, without having to come back in and trying to limit that cost from that. And with the existing pole barn the way it is, there is a slight amount of room where I could do that, but then you're talking about that slight amount of room, maybe 200 square foot or something additional that I might be able to get out of that area, with also cutting down a major silver maple, getting in there, digging up all the root system so that concrete could be poured in there and actually be able to set completely. Along with that, it's not going to be an easy extension of just extending a little bit over on the side. It's going to be extending and then reversing back at a gable and then kind of taking up a weird kind of shape. But still only the one entry point in the front. So, and then I would kind of say that yes, it is bigger in square footage, but then also the area it's at, yes, it's to the side. Yes, it is closer to the line. It's past the 20 feet. It does have a line of vegetation in front of it, along with that vegetation to block to in front of the road with 4 pine trees and an existing maple. So it's tucked in, it is nowhere near directly in front of the house. It's on the side of the house, it's on the side of the driveway, and being likewise materials, it is matching the pole barn that is also on that general direction of there. Now to build it out further out front, that's a major thing, taking out an asphalt driveway, trying to renovate everything, move it in there, or just basically use my garage as nothing other than a walk-in shed, basically, because then you're cutting off the path of the driveway that's going into there.
So just out of curiosity, for my own minutes, when you guys say that you agree that there is a hardship in the rear yard, that he can't possibly build what he is allotted, which in the rear yard is 3,200 square feet, he is allowed in the area where he's zoned at. Saying that that's a hardship, what does that get him? Just to say, yeah, it's a hardship, or does it get him to put that in the front of the house? It's not that he wants it there, you know what I mean? He doesn't want to put his pole barn there. He wants it in his backyard. So what does that do? What is...
The hardship does allow him to build something in the front yard, but it also falls into the rest of the guidelines because it is now in the front yard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, just with reference back to the ordinance, to Gina's point, you know, the verbiage here is significant because it has all these kind of inflexible elements for detached accessory buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And then to sub E, which pertains to, you know, buildings out front, it uses the term may, right? A detached accessory building may be constructed in front of the main or principal building, provided the following conditions are met. But everything leading up to the hardship regarding the topographical challenges behind the house,
Mm-hmm.
An agreement that there's a hardship that gets him through the door to the front yard, if you will, only puts him into the subdivision E with regard to he may come up front as long as these conditions are met. So in my view, where the rubber meets the road for this meeting.
So he wouldn't need a variance if he follows that. He wouldn't need a variance. If he is only half the size of his house and it's in the front yard with like materials, he wouldn't need a variance.
If he met the intent of 50%,
Mhm.
700 square,
Right.
that's roughly say 700 square feet, and met with like materials, yeah, the variance, he would meet the ordinance and be
Right.
able to build a
Right.
700 square foot structure meeting with the like materials of that principal structure.
I would agree.
So, yeah, so we're trying to find a way that perhaps he can get more than that. Have you heard from the neighbors? Do we have any feedback on?
Do we have any?
My concern is the size. I mean, they have no place else to put
Can you
it.
state for the record, can you state your name and
Oh,
address?
Debbie Harrison, and I live at 900 Hollywood.
She's across the street from us.
Across the street? Okay. Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry, just.
That was my concern with the whole issue, was the size.
Okay.
You know, I mean, they have no other
From
place
what
to put
perspective?
it.
Because you're gonna see it across the street. Tell me why the size is a concern for you.
Because when I got the letter,
Okay.
it just said that it was like 700 square feet larger, they wanted 700 square feet more than what was allowed. And I didn't really know what was allowed, I didn't look at the ordinance or anything like that. But, when you say that it's not gonna come out further than the front of the house, is that Smith's house or is
Yeah.
that Nestor's house?
Yeah.
Smith's house.
Smith's house, so,
It'll
It
stay
would
back
sit
behind
the
Smith's.
front of the Smith's house.
okay, but it'll come out farther than Nestor's house.
No,
No, Nestor's house wouldn't come out farther either.
How much in
It's
front
just
of your house?
coming out in front of his house.
It's
It
just.
it would just be in front of my house, but yeah.
By
it'd
how many
be,
feet?
Quite a few.
It's
Oh,
quite a bit in front of our house, the way our property's shaped, but the two neighboring houses that are there, it'd be behind the front line of their house,
in front.
so.
Yeah, just to answer the question, I would, just by looking at the aerial maps and knowing the distances out there, I'd say somewhere in the neighborhood of 20-30 feet in front of the house, of their house, the barn would sit.
But that part's not the
Yeah,
issue.
that's-
Yeah, that's,
it's not-
that's not,
It's, we have that big maple next to Smith's, it'd be behind that.
I would be curious, is the neighbor present tonight that resides right behind the barn?
The Smiths and.
Is that Smith's?
Yeah, and I know them very well and have talked to them and that there's no objection. I even asked about getting a letter written, but, we didn't.
and you didn't
Usually-
hear any, yeah, usually
Yeah.
Danielle hears if somebody's.
Yeah, and someone will call me, and I did get calls on this one actually, which I never do. But I don't ever really have anybody submit the letters because the ordinances is the ordinances is the ordinances, so.
And as far as pole barns in our area of size or things like that, just on our street alone, there's multiple very, very big pole barns. And, it'd still be kind of smaller than that. Along with that, we live next to probably the biggest pole barn in the area, and it is very close to my house,
Yeah.
which is the horse farm. And that is nowhere like the like materials. It's in front of their house. It's 500% larger than their home.
and it's in our view.
And
where
it's in
ours
our
will not
view
need it.
every day. It's very, very close. They put a privacy fence, but with the hill, you still can see it. You still hear the people riding the horses. It's very loud. It's fine. I don't really complain other than, it's there. And it's being used all the time. And it's to the side of our house, to the front of our house. It's a very, very big one.
You have the shape of your property is definitely a big.
It's
yeah,
very unique.
yeah.
It's very strange. And
Yeah.
they said we can't,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
They're all weird.
they are weird on our road, and our weird takes weird
Mine's weird
turns,
too.
and we just can't fit them anywhere. So you see pole barns, and some of them might not be in front of the house, but the way the roads curve on our road, there's pole barns there. There's big one. I mean, there's one right next to your
Yeah,
house.
Simpsons have one and,
Yeah,
This is the
Rob's got one,
house
Rob's got
right
a
here.
huge one.
big
Yeah.
one. Yeah,
This is
the
the
Kate's
house
got
here.
one.
Yep.
This is the cook's house, this is the riding area, this is the large barn that he's referring to, that's in front of the house.
So-
Now, I do have to say,
It's grandfathered in, I'm sure.
yeah, because this ordinance for front yard, requirements for the barns
Mhm.
is within the last 5, 6, 7 years.
They've done it, I mean,
And stuff, so, I mean, it's hard, you can't really compare it to other neighboring properties
Understood.
and stuff, so,
Just matching the area, I guess, is my point.
Correct.
I 100% agree with the grandfather, and it's matching the point.
Right.
And I mean, the true, from what I heard, it sounds like the true intent is to not have something look way different, huge thing, directly in front of the house, just people, Wild West, building whatever they want, and bringing the property
Or
values down.
bringing like industrial
Or
to.
industrial
Right,
to
yeah.
that, so, I mean, we're not trying to bring industrial to it, we're trying to match the like materials, it's tucked in the side, it is by vegetation, it's kind of the only area we can do, it's the only area that we'll really ever be able to do in the future, for any kind of expansion, and that, to get any kind of true square footage, and it does match, even if they are grandfathered in, it matches kind of in that whole area, and from what I've heard, I don't think there's any current complaints from neighbors. I don't wanna speak for you now that you kinda know
Yeah.
the thing, so.
That was my, why I showed up, cause I was just curious as to how big it was actually gonna be.
So I do have a question, and I am gonna base it on the new ordinance language, because one of the changes that was made
Mm-hmm,
was the 5-foot rule.
mm-hmm.
how would that potentially, so now, it was passed last night that a detached accessory building can be only 5 feet away from another building. So how would that potentially move away from what we might be seeing as a not optimal placement, or, you know, for neighbor issues? How could we potentially shift things so it's within 5 feet of another building instead of 20 feet,
Can I ask-
or no?
I'm confused a little bit.
Okay,
So this new thing that we got passed,
right.
one, I assume, is the board passed it or is it the planning
No,
commission?
the planning commission referred it and the board passed it
Board
last night.
passed it, okay, so,
Yeah.
so it's in the ordinance, okay. So on the definition of a detached accessory building is anything that's 5 foot or more from the house.
Now it's, yeah, 5 feet or more. It was a larger space and now it
So
only has
it
to be 5
reduced,
feet.
it reduced it down so someone
It
could
did.
connect it with a breezeway and then it become
Correct.
attached.
Correct.
Okay, so how does, your question is how does this new ordinance impact this? I don't think it does it? Because it's a detached accessory building by this definition, whether it's, now it's 5 feet, it's not 5 feet,
Okay.
oh, it's like 30 feet.
Okay.
And, you know, so it's still detached, right?
Right.
So I still consider it a detached accessory. If it's within 5 feet, then it's not attached, right? Or it is considered attached. So I don't, not knowing the ins and outs of the ordinance, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
that's just my.
And it just, yeah, I mean, it's just.
It somehow got changed from 10 feet to 5 feet. I don't really know
And
how.
that's, yeah. but
It'll
I'm
probably
thinking-
get changed back with a text amendment because I don't know who changed it or who okayed it, but
Okay.
it was something I caught
Okay.
Is
last
it
minute
relevant?
and it already
I-
passed.
I'm
Well,
asking
that's what,
Jeff.
I guess that's what I'm asking, is it relevant in that we could potentially shift it? Because if the main concern is because of the size that it's going to be too encroaching on a neighboring property, even if it's real, you know, even not by setbacks, but by visual, can it be shifted? Cause you can push it a lot closer to maybe not rip up your asphalt on the other pole barn, but.
Could you move it farther
Could
back
you move it
towards the
further
house or is that's where all the trees are?
But correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm just.
You're,
I-
it's
I-
still
I-
detached and gotta fall under the right.
We as a Board of Appeals, we have an issue in front of us that is specifically related to the application of building a 1,400 square foot barn in the front yard because of there's no other place to put it, you know, and that's the crux of the issue is
Not
it
to
may
find a
be in the
solution.
front yard as long as it meets 50% of the principle and it follows and that's the thing that we have to stick to. I would love to come up with alternates for you, because my design mind is going all over the place, but that's not the purview
Right.
of what we're tasked with tonight. I mentioned the alternate merely as, a conversation piece, but it doesn't need to happen, I'm not directing you, I'm not doing anything. The application in front of us tonight is to determine whether or not we can locate this barn, a 1,400 square foot barn, made of metal with an asphalt shingle roof in front of Mr. and Mrs. Cook's house. And that's the variance that's being asked. And in my mind, and I feel, I really would love to say I would do that, but in my mind, the size, I think we could overcome the materials, but the size of it in relationship to the neighboring properties, in relationship to, all of that, it doesn't meet the intent of the ordinance in my mind. So I would not really, because of that size, I would not really be for it.
So, thanks, Mike, because I'm having the same struggle, and my consternation, my point of concern here is the significance of the deviation, because a variance, it's like a gradient of acceptability, and at one end you've got, yeah, we've seen this before, it's not a significant departure from the spirit and the intent of the ordinance, but yours is kind of at the other end, when you're talking 90% square footage of the dwelling. That seems to kind of fly in the face of the intent here, which is to keep structures on a parcel in relational proportion of one another, to maintain the character of and appearance of the neighborhood, if you will. So I come back to the cause, or what is the term I'm looking for here? The practical difficulty or the hardship that governs the size.
Other than financial.
Right.
So, and you have an existing pole barn.
Mhm.
What are the dimensions of that structure?
It's, yeah, it's like 14 by 25-ish.
And the proposed dimensions of
I don't
barn
remember
number two,
offhand, so.
barn number two, what are the
30,
proposed?
32 by 48.
32 by 40. So I guess back to the question, other than financial, what is the practical difficulty or hardship that's driving the square footage request?
The square footage request is just be able to build the size and be able to store the things that we want for the future.
You're afraid from having blight in our yard.
Yeah.
We can tuck it all the way into a building where our neighbors can't see it, and plants can't grow over it.
And we have a property that's over 2.5 acres, and all of our neighbors are very similar in size. All of our neighbors have similar sized garages. I just have a pole or a pond in our backyard that I can't build it with a triangular shape. Really, I believe I am trying to meet the true intent of this is keeping likewise. It's off to the side of my property. It's going in. It's square footage. It's I could build 3,200 square foot in my backyard if I want to drain my pond and get rid of the wildlife, you know? And really, I'm trying to be able to store for what I want in the future. There's no other spot I can build. There's no other potential increases. Trying to go in for variance after variance or things like that. We're meeting everything that's similar in the neighborhood. We're not changing it. We're only making property values going up. We're trying to invest in Groveland Township and the property here. I believe we are meeting the true intent here.
What
Almost
is
to a
the-
T, and we're smaller in square footage in the area of our house, and that pole barn is gonna be smaller than half the pole barns in the area,
So
so.
what is the square footage of the home, the dwelling? Again, if you know.
It's 1,400 square foot of the dwelling, what,
When
And
you
then
reference
after
the sunroom or
what
some,
else?
it might bring it up to 1,700, and I believe that it's not included, I couldn't tell you, swear I know for sure, but, you know, but
Right
that's
now,
what
I
it
just
would
looked
be.
on Zillow, and it puts it at 1,428, not including the sunroom.
So if you added the sunroom, you're about 850, another,
Just let me-
1,700 divided by 2, you're at 850 is the square footage of the barn that you could meet the intent of the ordinance.
Yeah.
Which is basically, what I was doing on my phone, I was kind of calculating out what that was, going, well, that's a 24 by 36 garage that I know my barn's 24 by 36 in my backyard,
Mhm.
and when I have space in there and stuff, so I'm spatially trying to work it through my head. I really want to support, but the size is just, I'm just having difficulty with that, so please forgive me, but, you know, if there was an opportunity that, you know, a 24 by 36 would be more appropriate, you know, I could go for something like that too. I mean, that,
Closer to what we're trying to achieve by
yeah,
following
not
the ordinance,
90% of
right,
not 90% of the principal dwelling, because you gotta, it's the ratio of the buildings too on the lot that you gotta look at. you unfortunately have a weird shaped lot. And we agree that that's a hardship. That, we're not disputing that. We're talking about, okay, now how do we overcome, what's the hardships for the square footage? What's that? And the financial is not a consideration when you look at that, you know? So, you know, the storage, you know, that's something that, you know, is personally driven, you know? What is the actual, is there something physically is preventing you to do that? So that's where I'm struggling with the size of the building. I'm quite frank on that, but I could see a smaller building overall in that location. And again, that's kind of the route that I guess I would look at too.
So in a pole barn, is the lofted area included in the square footage?
I think it's the footprint of the building.
Thank you, okay.
It's the actual footprint of that building. You gotta still maintain the height requirements of the bulk, under the
Right,
bulk requirements. So you can't build a skyrise in
No.
that footprint, but.
But does that help you with storage if you have a?
Not really.
Can you
I'm
put your
talking
boat on
about
the second floor?
Yeah. Adding on a second floor, I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, I have multiple boats. I have stuff that's stored all over the yard. I have hunting stuff and fishing stuff stored all over. I moved to Groveland where I'm supposed to be in the countryside. I live in farming areas. I live next to a farm. You know, we bought that property 11 years ago when this variance didn't exist. I didn't even know it came out, otherwise I would have been up here saying something at the time, but it came out. We had always planned to kind of build a pole barn in that area, and then with financials, we came to a point that we're financially able to invest into our property, invest into Groveland. And that's what we wanted to do. And so if I want to buy 3 side-by-sides, because I want to, and everybody in our neighborhood has them, keep them out under their tarp, you know, or build something else. So it's a little frustrating for me, I guess. You know, we pay all these taxes. I believe I truly am meeting the intent of what really was there. I don't have some monstrosity that's being built. It's under this, well under, if we factor in the garage, and I know that's not part of the thing, but we're well under. I fall under the square footage. It is in the front of my yard, but we have a very wide property.
And
It's wide. We're in the side, we're tucked to the side. It's off to the side.
That's my sticker, is if he could put it in the back, he could put up what he wants.
I could double it.
That's my problem with saying no.
And, I mean, I could take square footages on Google Maps and I can tell you all the square footages of the pole barns in the area. And guess what? I'm gonna feel really small. I'm gonna feel inadequate because I'm not coming anywhere near what everybody else is doing. And we live on a private drive where everybody has that. It's kind of the country, you know? It's the intent of people that live in the country to have equipment, to have large lawnmowers, to have boats, to be able to do all these outdoor activities with all the lakes that we live around. You know, it's what we strive for in Groveland. If not, I mean, why don't I pick up and move to Madison Heights? I can get a house cheaper, you know?
So just roughly on the numbers, you could build a pole barn that's twice the size of your existing pole barn and not require a variance. Twice the size, right? That would be roughly 850 square feet. Your pole barn currently is
I really
roughly
guess.
350.
I didn't get on there and measure. I
Right.
don't know. It's kind of the spur of the moment.
But Bo, I think what's driving my curiosity is what's the motivation for the dimensions, 32 by 48, knowing what the ordinance says, right? 90%, could you scale that down? Could you come within, say, 60%, right? Or something that would bring it more in keeping with the intent of the code? Is that an option?
I mean,
Because
to
I'm
be
not
honest, you
hearing.
tell me, because if you tell me no, then yes, that's an option for me.
Because
It
I'm
just
not
means that I get
hearing-
to have less fun in the future,
Honestly,
you know, less freedom, but
we're
I'll take what I
bound-
can get, you know.
We're bound by you know, our role here is
Sure.
to maintain the integrity of the local ordinance, okay? And as much as I sympathize with your situation, you know, I don't wanna act in isolation of my responsibility to the township residents, and I hope you understand that. So the question becomes, can we find a middle ground that's acceptable to you that we could approve, knowing that we've, you know, maintained our role?
1,200 square foot.
And it comes down to practical difficulty or hardship, right? That's where as I understand it, that's where the essence of the approval comes from, right?
Right.
And just to say, you know, Joe next door has got a bigger pole barn, well, maybe his isn't sitting in the front yard, and maybe it doesn't fall within, you know, subdivision E. That speaks to, and I quote, a detached accessory building shall have no more than 50% of the square footage of the principal or main building, shall. So the variance request, motivated by practical difficulty or hardship, leads us to conclude, how do we get around that? When we're looking at a 90% equation, you know?
I mean, really, like I say, the practical difficulty is primarily I can't build another pole barn in the backyard. I can't build anything else really truly on the property. It's not really feasible. And with that, practical difficulty is being able to have storage for what we want to use in a residential area. And you're right, some of the other ones might have bigger square footage than that. My neighbor doesn't, but he's grandfathered in. So, and it's trying to, like I said, going back to the original, is not trying to build a monstrosity, not trying to put it directly in front of the house, and trying to keep property values and the intent of the area up. And I still.
And you're striking exactly on the chord of concern, personally with me, is that if you were to relocate and you move across the township, and you take up residence, and your adjacent property owner wants to put a very large pole barn in his front yard 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever it is, and he comes before this board asking the same thing that you're asking us to do, we're gonna be in a pickle when it comes to denying him, because we've denied you here tonight, or approved you here tonight, theoretically. Does that make sense? Something called precedent that we have to be concerned about, because.
But the lot is not viewable from the road, so unless there's someone who is right at our property line, it won't be viewable for everyone to see it. That's where my hardship in taking that.
See it?
We have the tree lines all along the front of our house, our property line, and we have a tree line all along the line that the structure is going to sit at. We're not building a hotel, we're keeping it at our normal 10-foot ceiling. It's not going to be anything large and above that tree line where people can see it from the road.
And obviously, I mean, to your point too, like our neighbors, nobody can, except for the neighbor now, which there's no objections. All the other neighbors that I talked to, there was no objections. It's kind of keeping it similar to the area, especially living on a private drive. We are on a private drive. We maintain our own road. So there's not that traffic.
And Ms. Harrison, your singular purpose in being here tonight was just the size of the structure, and
The way it was worded in the letter, that it was over 700 square feet. That didn't
Or
state
over
the size,
50%.
or over 50%.
Well, it said it was 700 square feet larger than what the ordinance allowed.
She didn't know.
And so, but I didn't know what the ordinance, you know, what was allowed and.
Lynn, did you have some?
Yeah, the reason I'm here is, I don't know if you've seen Grange Hall, somebody
Oh.
built a house, or a barn right beside, and they had to attach it. But it is such an eyesore as you go down and you
Yes.
turn there, it's like,
You can see it from the road,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it's ugly. And I went by your house today and I'm thinking, okay, if you're gonna put your barn here towards the north, yeah, people are gonna see it, especially if it's like 20, 30 feet in front of the house. I would not, you're gonna look at it, that would upset me if I had to look at that, me personally. You can't see my house from the road.
No, and also our house, the very front of our house, I know Mike has at least went to the property.
Right, I do too.
Okay, you too, and we live, the very front of our house, you have to drive up a hill to even start seeing really truly back there. Again, and also being on a private drive. You're not delivering mail, you're not delivering a package, and you don't live on that street or visiting someone on that street, you don't belong there. I'm not on a busy street, you know? And nobody that lives on the private drive obviously has an objection.
So how many square feet is 24 by 36?
836?
864.
864, thank you. See, that was never good at math.
I have a question. So, if he can only build a certain amount right now because of what the ordinance says, not taking into consideration that he could build 3,200 in the rear. If he doesn't have any other place on the property to build another accessory building, and he has all this stuff, and I will go out there and get him for blight if it's accumulated, what is he supposed to do in the future when he gets something else? We just have to cap his lifestyle at what it is now? I'm just asking, because I'm just wondering what you...
I'm just gonna ask you to restate that, because I didn't fully understand what you just asked, to be honest with you.
So if he has no other place to put this pole barn except for in its location, and if he makes it 850 square feet, he can fit what he has in there now, but nothing else. So I just...
Can I ask a crazy question with complete disregard of the financial aspect of this? If your existing barn were to become your front barn, would you have room in the existing location of your current barn to build a 32 by 48?
The current one?
Correct.
Where it's at? No.
In other words, if we were to, if we had Lego pieces here and you could just move the back pole barn to where you're proposing, you put this new pole barn, the space that would be voided, would that be sufficient to accommodate what you're proposing? In other words, could you put the pole barn number 2 where pole barn number 1 sits currently?
No. Unless I wanna come back in here for another variance within the 20 feet of my neighbor's property line, and a variance within 5 feet of the other, or potentially protruding into an area that's close to wetlands and having it fall apart down the road, then I cannot.
Which is why you're not just adding on to that pole
Yeah,
barn.
and then also our driveway and access to the garage would be gone. And like I said, it'd be a walk-in shed with a nice garage door. Cause our driveway goes right there, that's where our main parking, the driveway tees to the pole barn. We turn right, you go into the main parking spot, and then it goes into the garage itself. And then the turnaround portion is you back up into the other front of the pole barn. So even if I took that area up, I don't think I could fit it in that dimension. I could put a big box of a pole barn, maybe, kind of trying to work out the square footages here in my head, but no, I don't think it would fit unless I can get some other kind of variances on.
Along those thoughts, and again, my architectural mind is going wild right now with a lot of thoughts and ideas for you, and have you considered an attached structure to your house going linearly towards the side yard property line, maintaining those and getting the square footage between your existing garage and turning your driveway, turning a direct entrance right into your garage, so you wouldn't have to turn 90 degrees to get into your garage anymore. You would pull directly in, and your existing garage would be your storage for some of your equipment and the things along that lines, so that you can get the square footage between the area that you have where your existing pole barn is, as well as where your existing garage is, and all of that stuff in there. The point I'm trying to make is I think there's some opportunities for exploration for getting the sizes that you want with potentially without getting a variance. And I think that, you know, that's where I think that's where some of my struggle is also coming from, is that as Jeff said, we're here to meet the intent. As much as I sympathize with the lot you're on and the way it is, we're here to meet the intent of the ordinance, which is to the size in front of the front of the house, in the front yard. So if there's alternatives out there to consider, maybe those alternatives might give you the same square footage you were looking for without even a variance. Even if it's attached and it's still meeting the side yard setbacks and things along that lines, there might be an alternative there that you could redirect that. Those are the things that I see when I visit the site as an exploration of what you can do so that we can maintain the intent of the ordinance in Groveland Township, which we are guided by, and you can still get the storage that you're desiring within that area. Can that work? I don't know the answer to that, but it's a thought and it's an idea. On that note, you know, I hate like heck to deny something with alternatives out there to be explored and give someone the opportunity to explore those alternatives and rescind or possibly even table the application tonight so that you can look at those alternatives, because we need to meet the intent of that ordinance. And I think that there are opportunities out there for you to do that, for us to maintain that ordinance, and for you to get the square footages that you're looking for your storage. I sympathize with the lot you're on. I truly do. It's not an easy lot. I wish you were on my lot, 2.5 acres, long, linear. You could build whatever on that. You could build 3,200 square feet on that. I sympathize. I truly do. But as Jeff said, we're here guided by an ordinance for the community that's been approved through a process of the community, through several meetings and master plans and things along that lines, public input that we're guided by to maintain the integrity of our community. And I'm really struggling if there's still alternatives out there that may or may not require a variance.
Yeah, the alternatives with our house, we don't wanna start making our house an L shape. We like the open front of it the way it is, and it's the reason we bought it. That's major renovation to the house and changing the whole shape and the view of the house from there. There's a lot of stuff I can do. There's a lot of stuff that anybody can do on their property with unlimited funds.
And I'm not talking L shape, I'm talking just linear going out. You wouldn't have it L shape. So I'm just, those are some, that's where I'm at right
And
now.
it's not a stick-built pole barn anymore. It's
It's an addition.
It's an addition,
It's
right?
an addition.
And it's completely different.
She has our insurance.
Yeah, major insurance changes to a lot of other different things.
Oh, there you go.
I mean, really, what is the maximum allowable though that you guys feel comfortable with percentage-wise? I mean,
Well, and that's
I
from-
talked about 1,200 square foot. I know I want 1,400, but 1,200 would be good. Is that good enough for you guys, or are we talking going from 700 to 800? You know,
Yeah.
what's
Well,
the?
I mean, I think it was Gina that cited the dimensions earlier of 24 by 36. That comes to 864, which is fairly 50%. It's a little more than 50%. So in compliance with the strict wording of the ordinance as it exists, right?
That would be the minimum.
That would be the minimum. And the upward, in 864 from 850 is pretty much in compliance in my view. So where's the upward deviation? That question comes back to, a meeting of the minds, right? In my opinion, I don't know if it's 1536, which is what you're proposing, unfortunately. But I think there are, as Mike pointed out, I think there are options available that could give you exactly what you have in mind, but maybe not on the scale you're asking for.
I mean, the main options are, forget about the variance and I'll just go in and build, an addition onto my house. To me, that's not an option, that's not an option of alternative of variance.
It's
That's
not what
not-
you're looking for.
No,
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, we're talking about an additional stick-built structure, trying to keep the cost down.
So have you
to
looked
an
at
affordable
pole barn
range.
kits?
Yes.
Okay, and what ones are you looking at? What are
It's
the
not necessarily the
options?
pole barn kit, we've
Okay.
had the pole barn quoted from, Curtin's for the lumber to try to build that. So 32 foot is a standard kind of header range that we're looking at. And, I mean, originally we're running 50, but 48 fills within that line. So, I mean, what you talked about earlier, whatever, 750 or 800 square foot going to 805, I mean,
Yeah,
you guys are,
no.
we had this meeting for 3% variance, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
so.
So go a 30 by 40, I don't know how these pole barns, what the options are for dimensions, but a 30 by 40 is 1,200, which is what you said.
Yeah,
That's
like I
a
said,
number
I want 48, but I'll take the 1,400, but I'll take 1,200, It's what can I get, on my property,
And that's 70%,
okay?
roughly 70%, which is a hell of a lot more in keeping with the ordinance than 90%. So, I think it is significant that this was noticed as a public hearing. There was an invitation to your neighbors and adjacent property owners, anybody with an interest to show up and voice their concerns or their objections, whatever. And, Ms. Harrison's the only one that showed up tonight. So, but I guess for my purposes, what you proposed, the size, is just too far beyond what the,
So are you willing to go to 1,200?
I would be in favor, I will say this for the record, I will be in favor of something that's more in keeping with the black and white language of the ordinance. 70%, in my opinion, is probably about the upper range of personally where I would voice approval. But I'm going to be honest with you, the practical difficulty or hardship element I'm struggling with, honestly. Because it's one, as my parents always said, there's a difference between a want and a need, right? We all have wants in life, but we're constrained by circumstances or resources or government that restricts us from what we want. What we need is a different story, and that's what drives the practical difficulty or hardship element.
So I'm taking this all in, and I completely agree with it not being, 90% is a lot, okay, to ask. However, how many practical difficulties and how many hardships do we have to show? Seriously, do we have to, for every line item, do we have to show a practical difficulty and a hardship? Or have they fulfilled the practical difficulty and the hardship in literally having to put it where they need to put it?
I don't know the answer to that.
And you've got the seniority here. My experience on this board does not say, I'm asking for a clarification.
Well, I'm
because
gonna tell-
My experience on this board is we don't have to line by line practical difficulty hardship. It's, do they have one?
In the last schooling that I took for my zoning administrator certificate, it was said that the variances are there for, or the ordinance are here for a reason. In this ordinance for the front yard is for somebody who says, I wanna put this blue massive structure in my front yard because I want to. not because I have any hardship or practical difficulty, I just want to do this. Well, we said, fine, you can do that, but it has to be this certain style, the size, whatever. This is, in my zoning administrator opinion, this I feel is different because of the hardship. The hardship is their backyard is a swamp. And if they didn't have that swamp in that backyard, they could build a 3,200 square foot pole barn. They're only asking to build 1,500 in the front. They're not asking to build in the front because they want it in the front, they want it in the back. So their hardship is that one in the back. They can't do it. Which, like I said before, I don't think because of a hardship, they should be capped at what toys they're allowed to have.
Right.
That's just-
It's not an easy question, I hope you understand. But Gina raises an interesting point with regard to once you've proven hardship topographically, meaning you can't put it behind the house. What does subdivision even mean? It loses all purpose if we don't apply the same logic, in my view. Like you have to follow the language.
Yeah, you
You know what
do,
I'm saying?
and the
So-
hardship does say put it in front, and then we do have rules. If you put it in front, you need to do this,
I
this,
think
and
the
this.
hardship gets you through the door of may
Okay.
be constructed, assuming that there's
Okay.
practical difficulty or hardship. But
Right.
once you're now into the front yard and we're considering compliance, then you get to the word shall,
Mhm.
right? A detached accessory building shall have no more than 50% of the square footage of the principal or main building. So how do we get around the shall, other than through practical difficulty or hardship, in my view? And that's what I'm struggling with. And I guess I've said sufficiently, I could accommodate a compromise. And I've delineated the limit of my personal acceptance of the compromise, sans some reason or compelling additional information that you have that I've not considered here tonight.
And I would like to also point out that even if you found the workable solution for the practicality of the situation for square footage, you still have the hardship or practicality of the, for the facade and the materials and stuff. So
Well-
we haven't brought up that because we still haven't been able to get through
I
the
think
square
we-
footage.
I think we did that right from the get-go. He said the materials would be to match the pole barn that's existing.
But that's not
But that's
matching
not
the principal
the
building.
ordinance, right?
I mean, the technicality of the law, you're right, that was added there. In practicality, it would be the closest structure to it would be the other pole barn.
Right.
So,
And I hate to keep coming back to the language,
Sure.
Bo,
But no, it's
but
true.
the terminology with regard to appearance,
It's
if you will,
principal building
it
instruction.
must be comparable, which is a very nebulous term. It must be comparable, but to the principal or main building. We would all agree the principal or main building here is your dwelling, is your home, correct?
Mhm.
So I look at the term comparable as being very subjective and having a lot of leniency built into it for consideration. I don't share that sentiment with regard to the term shall. And shall is a hard and fast
Right.
condition that suggests inflexibility, but for the purpose of the variance. That's tied to practical difficulty or hardship. That's just as I see it.
and as far as the siding and shell, it's gonna be shingles. That part's the same.
Well,
It's gonna
again,
be
that's-
color, right?
That's comparable, right? It must be comparable. to the-
Comparable.
Or comparable, thank you, to the principal or main building in construction, design, and exterior finish. So, it's pretty loosey-goosey to use, you know.
And that's where, when we look at the principal building, yes, you have a majority of your facade or exterior finish has brick on it, also has the T111 siding on it too. I think, or vinyl siding. Vinyl siding. But there's a majority of that brick exterior finish, so when you look at those types of things, those need to be carried over into that, and we haven't really discussed those too. Again, I come back to that practical difficulty for those two items. I understand the point that this
Right.
proposal is forced by the fact that there's no other place in the backyard doing it.
Right,
Okay, that's great, I understand that. So now,
now that we're in the front, we still have
you
guidelines.
still have those other line items
Right.
to address. And I understand what you have in the zoning administrator guidelines and stuff. My background in planning and design, I've been through many site plan approval processes and stuff, and having an understanding, at least in broad sense of the terms, it is okay, yes, there is a hardship there, but we need to address the other portions of meeting that ordinance. And I've always been through that process of saying, okay, yeah, we do have that hardship. Guess what? Now we got these other things that we have to meet too as well. And just because one's related, it still doesn't preclude us from doing that. And that's my sense of maintaining the ordinance for this community as it is written. If I could find a way around it, I'd be honest with you, if to Jeff's terms, you know, on square footage, 70%, I'm still not comfortable. 864 with, you know, 14 to 25% over, 14 to 25 square foot over what's allowable based on an 850 square foot allowance, I'd be comfortable with that variance, knowing what it is. You say it's on the high end, that practical difficulty of following that 50% rule, it's written, shall have no more than 50%. And I'm pushing it, quite honestly, by even saying, I'll give you 25% or 25 more square feet. Because when you come down to fighting that or going after that, we're showing that precedence and stuff. So, and I don't think I would be in favor even at a 70%. What is my upper limit? I can't really answer that. I really couldn't.
No, I know. It's very difficult, personally. So, I guess from this point, unless anybody who's here, ma'am, did you have a comment to offer? Or I guess start with your name.
Judy Flynn, and I'm a resident of Groveland Township. I've lived here 50 years. And I went by the house and the property. I looked at it a couple weeks ago. My concern is that this board and our township follows the rules. I'm concerned about other neighbors who aren't here and the whole tenor of that community. It's a beautiful street, and I think it should stay that way.
Thank you. That doesn't make things easier, but I appreciate it. So, I did not visit the site, and I do apologize for that, but I appreciate that you both did. Danielle, I turn it back to you. Do we take a vote? Do we close the public hearing?
You close the public hearing and then you'll vote.
Okay.
Would they want to have it tabled in case
To
you guys vote
explore.
against it?
Right.
That they could kind of look and see if they could do something else?
Can we hire you, Mike, to give us some decisions?
Oh, no, I have to recuse myself, no.
Yeah, it's great ideas.
I think that is the better option right now.
And maybe
'cause I
have a
do
full
think
board.
They do have.
You won't have to pay.
Right.
What's that?
No,
You won't
no,
be
no, no,
charged.
no, you do not.
Be no charge.
No, No, they don't pay another fee.
No.
No,
But the applicant would have to request to table it then,
correct.
correct? Am I correct on that?
You can table it, we can schedule it for another time, we'll have a full board,
Right,
all 5.
and then you explore other options, and perhaps even come back with 11 or 1,200 square feet instead of
I
14.
mean, I can come back 11 or 1200, but
No,
from
but I
what
mean,
I'm hearing
depending
here,
on what
it's,
you find,
you know,
depending on what you find out.
And our 7 neighbors that doesn't care that we have it?
And what?
And our
Yeah,
7 neighbors that don't
absolutely.
care if we have it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, short of changing the square footage, or maybe we could play whatever about the siding and do vinyl siding and change it completely and it doesn't match my pole barn, but okay. But I mean, short of that, the only other solutions are I build a home extension and then
And then
the
we
variance
go ahead,
doesn't
it's
even
all-
apply, it doesn't really matter. But then there goes a huge difference in taxes, a huge difference in heating, a huge difference in everything, you know? So I'm not sure, other than people that may have varying opinions, you know.
It's an option.
There's no other,
It's an option, Bo and Leslie, for you to, if you chose to explore other options, if you feel right now that there are no other options, then the board would then be able to, would then close the public hearing and then vote on it, a yay or nay, and stuff, and then that would end the topic for the township. So, it would be, you know.
I just don't know what to
deny,
do.
depending on the tenor of the board.
I don't know what to change, you know, other than to have a variant. So, I mean, square footage, I'll change the square footage to something we talked about. Is that gonna change it? But I mean, right now, it's on the portion of the square footage and the size, right? And I don't know if you guys vote and say, oh, my thing says 1,400. I would have passed it at 1,100. I would have passed it at 1,200. I would have passed it at 900, right? I mean, how does that work, right? I mean,
Well, right now, it's 50% of your principal building, period, shall have no more than 50%. Plus, then you have to take into account of the exterior finishes. So, that's what a board will do. There may be 5, 6 of us up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us up here, making that decision. And one of us, me mainly, could vote no on the approval, but 4 others would vote yay. And your motion to approve the variance could happen. So that's why we have boards helping decide these things. So that's, tonight, basically, you have the option to ask us to table it so you can explore those options. Or, if you feel there are no other options, then we would close the public session. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, please. And the 3 of us would vote on to approve or deny the request. And after the approval and denial is a final decision.
now in that I have 3 different variant requests, and one of them's numerical, being the square footage. When you guys vote, is it in a totality of everything that's on there, yes or no? Or you guys vote that, yes, you can build it in the front yard. Yes, you can use the same materials, but no on the square footage, just as an example. How does that work?
We have to vote to maintain the integrity of the ordinance. And it's pretty, the things that we're struggling over and sympathizing with you, quite honestly, are those things that we need to make decisions based on that. So those are the guiding principles of our decision. And that's what, you've heard the discussion tonight. And that's where going back, if you feel it might be an alternate, that you could request us to table it until you explore some other options, if you feel that way, or we vote on it.
Or if you wanted tonight, before we close, you would say, this is what I'm presenting to you. if there were any, you know, like materials, go through the whole thing and perhaps change from 1,400 to something else. That is what we would entertain at that point, not what is written on the piece of paper. You have the option to change those components based on what you're learning about what the ordinance will bear.
I guess I move to table.
And personally, I welcome that because I do feel there's a lot of middle ground here. I think just because of the deviation that the request brings to us tonight, a board of 3. I mean, you've been here all night, you've heard our comments, you sense our concerns. I think I know personally, I would have difficulty approving this as it stands before me currently. But if you explore other options and look at revising the request to more, more significantly comply with the ordinance, I can't speak to the outcome, but I think it would be a wise move on your part.
I too feel the same way. Explore those options and come back, if needed, come back and to a board, you know, that with some, with your variance or, you know, your options. So I feel that tabling is probably in your best interest at this point, so that you don't get the final decision where it's final.
And also know that the other 2 people that are normally here have been on this board for a long time.
So
They've seen a lot.
Especially Judy.
Yes, exactly, yeah, and Chris as well, but yeah, so they're, yeah.
Good
I
point.
welcome, yeah, I
Good point. They
welcome
would bring a lot of
tabling. They will,
experience
yeah.
to that decision-making session.
Right.
So I think it's a prudent move on your part. So should we close the public hearing at this point, Danielle?
We're gonna table this, 1
Do
second.
we do that before we close?
We're gonna table it, then we're gonna close.
Okay.
And there's nothing to vote on, because there's been nothing
you
decided.
vote on the table? I mean, you voting to table it?
No, it's entirely
No,
up to the
he's-
resident.
Oh, it's.
Entitled to table or not. Doesn't-
Okay.
So we're gonna table it, then we're gonna close the public hearing,
Okay,
and we're gonna try and reschedule
We
this.
need a motion to close.
we do.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll support that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There being none, we're now out of public hearing. And with reference back to the agenda, I believe that's our last item on tonight's agenda. Danielle, anything else?
No,
No?
that is it.
I guess I would invite a motion to close the meeting at this point.
I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There being none? We're adjourned.
Thank you.